In a small, sleepy town surrounded by lush green forests and winding rivers, life moved at a predictable rhythm. The streets were lined with quaint houses, their porches adorned with flower pots and rocking chairs. People greeted each other warmly as they passed by, and the biggest excitement of the week was usually Friday night football games or Saturday morning farmers markets. But one chilly autumn morning, the peace of this idyllic town was shattered when an accusation sent shockwaves through its residents. The trouble began on a Tuesday. The sun had barely risen above the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. A frantic scream pierced the calm air, drawing curious neighbors out of their homes. Sarah Carter, a single mother in her mid-30s, stood in front of her modest house, her face pale and streaked with tears. She clutched a crumpled flyer in one hand and pointed wildly toward the park with the other. "My daughter is missing," she cried, her voice trembling. "Emily, my baby girl, she's gone." The crowd that gathered around her grew larger by the minute. Everyone knew Emily, a bright-eyed, freckled 10-year-old who loved riding her bike and playing with stray kittens. Her disappearance was unthinkable. As whispers rippled through the crowd, Sarah's next words turned the situation from worrying to explosive. "I saw him talking to her yesterday," she said, her voice quivering but firm. "That man, Marcus Johnson, he was near the swings where she likes to play." The name hung in the air like thunderclouds before a storm. Marcus Johnson was a familiar figure in the town. At 35 years old, he worked at a local auto repair shop, fixing cars with skill and patience. He was known for his friendly demeanor and willingness to help others, often staying late to assist customers or lending tools to neighbors. But despite his reputation for kindness, Marcus faced subtle prejudices because of his race. In a predominantly white town, he sometimes felt like an outsider, even though he'd lived there for over a decade. When Sarah accused Marcus of kidnapping Emily, the reaction was swift and harsh. People who had once smiled at him now glared suspiciously. Some muttered under their breath while others openly condemned him. Within hours, rumors spread faster than wildfire. By noon, the local diner buzzed with speculation. "It's always the quiet ones," someone remarked darkly. Another chimed in. "He never really fit in here anyway." By late afternoon, the police arrived at Marcus's small apartment above the garage where he worked. They knocked loudly, startling him as he sat eating lunch. When he opened the door, 2 officers stepped inside without asking permission. Their expressions were grim, their tone accusatory. "We need to ask you some questions about Emily Carter," one of them said bluntly. Marcus blinked in confusion. "Emily, what about her?" he asked, setting down his sandwich. His mind raced, trying to piece together why they were questioning him. Then it hit him. The park. Yesterday afternoon, after finishing a long day at work, he'd walked past the playground on his way home. He remembered seeing Emily sitting on the swings, humming softly to herself. He'd waved and called out a cheerful greeting. She smiled back and said hello, before hopping off the swing and running toward her house. "I didn't do anything wrong," Marcus insisted, his voice rising slightly as panic set in. "I just said hi to her, that's all." But the officers weren't convinced. Without evidence or witnesses to corroborate his story, they arrested him on suspicion of kidnapping. As handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Marcus felt a sinking sensation in his chest. How could this be happening? He hadn't hurt anyone. He barely even knew Emily. The news of Marcus's arrest spread like wildfire. Local TV stations descended on the town, eager to cover the dramatic story. Reporters camped outside the police station, shoving microphones into the faces of passers-by. Headlines screamed, "Local man accused of kidnapping white girl." The racial undertones of the coverage were impossible to ignore. Comment sections online filled with hateful messages, many blaming Marcus solely because of his skin color. Meanwhile, Marcus sat alone in a cold jail cell, replaying the events of the past 24 hours in his mind. He thought about his parents, who had raised him to treat everyone with respect and dignity. He thought about his co-workers, who relied on him to keep the shop running smoothly. And most of all, he thought about Emily, sweet, innocent Emily, and how terrified her family must be. It broke his heart to think of her scared and alone somewhere, yet here he was, locked up and accused of harming her. As days passed, the search for Emily intensified. Flyers bearing her smiling face appeared everywhere, in shop windows, on telephone poles, and taped to car windshields. Volunteers combed the woods and searched abandoned buildings, calling her name until their voices grew hoarse. Despite their efforts, there was no sign of her. The longer she remained missing, the angrier the townspeople became. Many directed their frustration at Marcus, believing his supposed involvement hindered the investigation. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse, holding signs that read, "Justice for Emily," and chanting slogans demanding his conviction. But not everyone believed Marcus was guilty. Detective Laura Bennett, a seasoned investigator assigned to the case, couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Unlike her colleagues, who seemed eager to close the case quickly, Laura took her time examining the details. She noticed inconsistencies in Sarah Carter's timeline. According to Sarah, she last saw Emily at 7 p.m. the previous evening. Yet several witnesses reported seeing Emily later that night, including a neighbor who claimed the girl waved goodbye as she rode her bike down the street. Laura also found it odd that no physical evidence linked Marcus to the alleged crime. There were no fingerprints, no eyewitness accounts, and no motive. Something about the whole scenario felt off. Determined to uncover the truth, Laura decided to dig deeper, not just into Marcus's background, but into Emily's life as well. While Marcus languished in jail, his reputation tarnished and his future uncertain, Laura worked tirelessly behind the scenes. She interviewed teachers, friends, and extended family members, piecing together a clearer picture of Emily's world. What she discovered would change everything, for Marcus, for Emily, and for the entire town. Though Marcus remained behind, Barr's hope lingered faintly in the corners of the story. Karma, as unpredictable as the weather, waited patiently to reveal itself. Little did anyone know, the truth would soon come to light, exposing hidden secrets and forcing the town to confront uncomfortable truths about prejudice, fear, and justice. Detective Laura Bennett was not like the other officers in the town's small police department. While many were quick to accept Sarah Carter's accusations against Marcus Johnson, Laura had spent years honing her instincts and learning to look beyond surface-level assumptions. She knew that rushing to judgment often led to mistakes that could ruin lives. Sitting at her cluttered desk late into the night, she stared at the case file spread out before her. Something about this situation didn't add up. The first thing that bothered Laura was Sarah's timeline. When questioned initially, Sarah claimed she last saw Emily at 7 p.m. the previous evening. However, multiple neighbors reported seeing Emily much later, around 8:30 p.m., riding her bike near the park. If Emily had been outside so late, why hadn't Sarah mentioned it? And why did her story keep changing whenever someone asked for specifics? Laura decided to visit Sarah again. This time she went alone, hoping to create a more relaxed environment where Sarah might let her guard down. The house was eerily quiet when Laura arrived. Toys lay scattered across the living room, floor and dirty dishes piled up in the sink. It was clear that life in the Carter household had been chaotic even before Emily disappeared. Sarah answered the door with red-rimmed eyes, looking exhausted. "Detective," she said weakly, stepping aside to let Laura in. "Please tell me, you've found my daughter." "I wish I could," Laura replied gently, taking a seat on the couch. "But I need your help to figure out what happened. Can we go over the details one more time?" Sarah hesitated, fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. "I already told you everything," she murmured. "Not quite," Laura said, leaning forward slightly. "You said you last saw Emily at 7 p.m., but several neighbors saw her riding her bike around 8:30. Why didn't you mention that earlier?" Sarah froze, her face turning pale. For a moment she seemed unable to speak. Then tears welled up in her eyes and she buried her face in her hands. I don't know," she stammered. "I guess I forgot." Laura studied her carefully. "Forgotten or left out?" she pressed. Sarah, if there's something you're not telling me, now's the time to say it. Your daughter's life depends on us getting the full picture. The weight of Laura's words finally broke through Sarah's defenses. Sobbing uncontrollably, she confessed, I didn't see her after dinner. I thought she was upstairs in her room, but when I checked later, she was gone. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. Everyone was asking questions, and I pointed the finger at Marcus because he's always around town, and people already think poorly of him. I thought they'd believe me. Laura's heart sank as the pieces began to fall into place. Sarah hadn't seen Marcus with Emily at all. She'd made it up out of desperation. Her false accusation wasn't just reckless, it was dangerous. An innocent man was sitting in jail while the real answers remained hidden. With Sarah's confession in hand, Laura turned her attention to another lead. Mr. Thompson, the elderly neighbor who lived 2 doors down from the Carters. Neighbors had mentioned that Emily often visited him, drawn by his habit of handing out candy to children. On the surface, Mr. Thompson seemed harmless, an old man with a kind smile and a love for gardening. But Laura knew better than to take appearances at face value. She dug into Mr. Thompson's background and discovered something unsettling. Decades ago, he had faced allegations of inappropriate behavior involving minors. Though no charges were ever filed due to lack of evidence, the accusations were enough to raise red flags. Over time, however, the incident faded from public memory, overshadowed by Mr. Thompson's wealth and contributions to the community. He became a respected figure once again, untouchable in the eyes of many. Armed with this new information, Laura paid Mr. Thompson a visit. His house was immaculate, with neatly trimmed hedges and flower beds bursting with color. When he opened the door, his expression shifted from polite curiosity to unease upon seeing Laura's badge. "Can I help you, detective?" he asked, his voice smooth but tinged with caution. "I'm investigating the disappearance of Emily Carter," Laura explained. "I understand she visited you occasionally. Do you have any idea where she might be?" Mr. Thompson shook his head vigorously. "No, I haven't seen her recently. Such a lovely girl. Terrible what's happened." Laura nodded, pretending to jot notes in her pad. "That's interesting because phone records show you made a call to a number registered to Rachel Carter, the girl's aunt, late last night. Care to explain that?" For a split second, panic flashed across Mr. Thompson's face. He quickly masked it with a forced laugh. "Oh, that? Yes, well, Emily stopped by briefly yesterday afternoon. She seemed upset about something. I offered her some candy, and we chatted for a bit. Later, I called Rachel to check if everything was okay at home. You can never be too careful these days." Laura raised an eyebrow. "So you admit Emily came to your house yesterday? That's funny, because earlier you said you hadn't seen her recently." Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably, realizing he'd slipped up. "Well, I may have forgotten that part earlier," he admitted sheepishly. "It's been such a stressful time, you know." Laura wasn't buying it. "Let's cut to the chase. Mr. Thompson, where is Emily?" The question hung in the air like a storm cloud. Mr. Thompson's composure crumbled, and he slumped into a nearby chair. All right, he muttered. "Emily came to me yesterday evening. She said she overheard her parents arguing and wanted to stay somewhere safe for a while. I offered to take her to Rachel's house. It's only 2 counties away. I dropped her off and left. I swear that's all I did." Laura's mind raced as she processed this revelation. If Mr. Thompson was telling the truth, Emily might be safe with her aunt. But his actions still raised serious concerns. Why hadn't he informed anyone? And why lie about it now? Before leaving, Laura warned Mr. Thompson sternly, "You'll be hearing from us again. Endangering a child like this isn't something we take lightly." Back at the station, Laura wasted no time contacting Rachel Carter. After confirming Emily's location, she arranged for authorities to bring the girl back home safely. Meanwhile, news of the breakthrough spread quickly through the town. Volunteers who had tirelessly searched for Emily erupted in cheers, hugging each other in relief. Flyers were torn down, and candles lit in vigil were extinguished as hope replaced despair. But amidst the joy, guilt lingered heavily in the air.
Many residents couldn't shake the image of Marcus Johnson, wrongfully accused and locked away based on nothing more than prejudice and fear. They realized how easily they had allowed bias to cloud their judgment, condemning an innocent man
Without evidence. Some felt ashamed while others vowed to make amends. When Emily returned to her mother's arms, the reunion was emotional but bittersweet. Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, promising never to let her out of sight again. Yet the scars of the past week would take time to heal, not just for Emily and her family, but for the entire town. As for Marcus, his release from jail marked the beginning of a long road to redemption for both him and the community that had failed him. Karma, as unpredictable as ever, had begun its work, ensuring that the truth emerged and justice prevailed. But the lessons learned during those tumultuous days would stay etched in everyone's minds forever. When Emily Carter was finally reunited with her mother, the town breathed a collective sigh of relief. The little girl who had captured everyone's hearts and fears was safe and sound. But while the immediate crisis had ended, the ripple effects of the past week continued to reverberate through the community. For Marcus Johnson, the man falsely accused of kidnapping Emily, freedom came too late to erase the pain and humiliation he endured. Detective Laura Bennett played a pivotal role in ensuring justice wasn't delayed any further. After confirming Emily's safety with Rachel Carter, her aunt Laura returned to the police station to present her findings. She gathered the sheriff, the district attorney, and other key officials in a cramped meeting room. The atmosphere was tense as she laid out the evidence piece by piece. Sarah Carter's confession of fabricating the accusation, Mr. Thompson's admission of hiding Emily, and the glaring lack of proof linking Marcus to the alleged crime. "We arrested an innocent man," Laura said firmly, her voice cutting through the silence. "And we did it because of prejudice, not facts. It's time we fix this." Her words struck a nerve. While some officers nodded in agreement, others shifted, uncomfortably in their seats. Admitting fault wasn't easy, especially when public opinion had already painted Marcus as guilty. Still, the truth couldn't be ignored. Within hours, Marcus was released from jail, his name cleared of all charges. As he walked out of the cold, sterile building into the bright sunlight, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. Marcus shielded his eyes, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. He hadn't expected such a crowd. "Mr. Johnson, how do you feel about being exonerated?" one reporter asked. "Do you plan to sue the town for wrongful arrest?" Another chimed in. Marcus held up a hand, signaling for quiet. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. "I just want to go home," he said simply. "This has been hard, really hard. I didn't hurt anyone, and I hope people remember that." His humility silenced the crowd momentarily. For many, guilt weighed heavily on their shoulders. They remembered the hateful things they'd said or thought about Marcus, the assumptions they'd made based solely on his race. Some lowered their heads in shame, while others called out apologies as he climbed into a friend's car and drove away. Back at his apartment above the garage, Marcus sat alone, processing everything that had happened. The space felt foreign now, almost suffocating. During his days in jail, he'd imagined returning to normalcy, fixing cars, chatting with customers, maybe taking a long walk around town. But reality hit him like a ton of bricks. Normalcy wasn't possible anymore. His life had been turned upside down, and no amount of apologies could undo the damage. He replayed the events in his mind, the accusations, the arrest, the nights spent staring at the ceiling of his cell, wondering if anyone would believe him. What hurt most was the betrayal, the realization that people he considered neighbors, even friends, had doubted him so easily. Their prejudice had nearly destroyed him. As Marcus wrestled with his emotions, the town grappled with its own reckoning. Conversations buzzed everywhere, in coffee shops, grocery stores, and church pews. Parents talked to their children about fairness and empathy. Teachers used the incident as a lesson in critical thinking, urging students not to jump to conclusions without evidence. Even local leaders organized town hall meetings to address systemic biases and promote unity. But not everyone was ready to move on. Mr. Thompson, The elderly neighbor who had driven Emily to her aunt's house faced severe backlash. Once respected for his generosity, he was now vilified for his secrecy and poor judgment. Angry residents picketed outside his home, holding signs that read, "Protect our kids," and "No more secrets." Others demanded legal action against him for endangering a minor. The court system eventually stepped in. Charges were formally filed against Mr. Thompson for child endangerment and obstruction of justice. Though he argued that he meant no harm and only wanted to help Emily, the judge ruled that his actions had put the girl at risk. Facing hefty fines and mandatory counseling, Mr. Thompson retreated from public life, his reputation irreparably tarnished. Meanwhile, Sarah Carter struggled to rebuild trust with her daughter in the community. Her false accusation had caused unimaginable harm, not just to Marcus but to countless others affected by the chaos. Social services intervened, offering support to ensure a safer environment for Emily. Counseling sessions became a regular part of their routine, helping them heal from the trauma of separation and lies. Despite the challenges, Emily adapted quickly to being back home. She missed her Aunt Rachel and the peacefulness of her temporary refuge, but she was glad to sleep in her own bed again. Her classmates welcomed her back with hugs and handmade cards, and teachers gave her extra attention to ease her transition. Slowly, but surely, life began to stabilize for the Carters. For Marcus, however, stability felt elusive. Days turned into weeks, yet reminders of his ordeal lingered. Strangers approached him on the street, apologizing profusely or thanking him for staying strong. Businesses offered free services, meals, haircuts, car repairs, as gestures of goodwill. A local pastor invited him to speak at a Sunday sermon, hoping his story would inspire forgiveness and understanding. Marcus declined, unsure if he was ready to share his pain publicly. Instead, he focused on regaining control of his life. He reopened the auto repair shop, which had temporarily closed during his absence, and threw himself into work. Fixing engines and troubleshooting mechanical issues provided a sense of purpose, a distraction from the emotional toll of recent events. Customers flocked to support him, bringing their vehicles for repairs and leaving generous tips. Some even started referring to him as a hero, though Marcus dismissed the label. "You don't have to call me that," he told a customer one afternoon. "I'm just trying to live my life." Yet deep down, Marcus knew his experience had changed him. He carried the weight of injustice like a scar, invisible but ever present. At the same time, he recognized the power of resilience. People often underestimated him, assuming he'd crumble under pressure. Instead, he stood tall, refusing to let hatred define him. As autumn gave way to winter, the town slowly transformed. Snow blanketed the streets, muffling the usual hustle and bustle. Decorations went up for the holidays, and festive lights twinkled in windows. Beneath the surface, though, tensions remained. Old prejudices wouldn't disappear overnight, and healing required effort from everyone. One evening, as Marcus walked home from work, he noticed a group of teenagers spray painting a mural on a boarded-up building. Curious, he stopped to watch. They had painted a large tree with sprawling branches, each leaf bearing a word: kindness, justice, forgiveness, unity. In bold letters beneath the tree they wrote, "Lessons learned." One of the teens spotted Marcus and waved him over. "We're doing this for you," the boy explained, "to remind everyone what happened and how we can do better." Marcus smiled faintly, touched by their gesture. "Thanks," he said softly. "That means a lot." As he continued walking, he glanced back at the mural. It wasn't perfect, some lines were uneven, and the colors bled together in places, but it symbolized hope. Hope that the town could grow stronger, wiser, and kinder. Hope that karma, though harsh, could also bring redemption. The weeks following Emily's return were a time of reflection and change for the small town. While life slowly returned to its usual rhythm, the scars left by the false accusation against Marcus Johnson remained fresh in everyone's minds. People began to realize that the incident wasn't just about one man or one family. It was a mirror reflecting deeper issues within their community. Prejudice, fear, and the ease with which rumors spread had nearly destroyed an innocent life. Now as they picked up the pieces, many wondered how they could ensure such a tragedy never happened again. Marcus tried to move forward, but it wasn't easy. Every trip to the grocery store, every walk through the park, felt like stepping into uncharted territory. Strangers approached him constantly, some offering heartfelt apologies, others simply staring in silence. A few clung stubbornly to their suspicions, whispering behind his back despite the overwhelming evidence proving his innocence. These moments stung, but Marcus chose not to engage. He knew hatred couldn't be fought with more hatred. It had to be met with patience and understanding. One day, while working at the auto repair shop, Marcus received an unexpected visitor, Sarah Carter. She stood hesitantly at the entrance, her hands clasped tightly together. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was heavy with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Can I talk to you?" Sarah finally asked, her voice trembling. Marcus nodded and gestured for her to sit on a nearby stool. "What is it?" Sarah took a deep breath, tears welling up in her eyes. "I came here to say I'm sorry," she began. "I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I need you to hear this. What I did, to accuse you of something so terrible, it was wrong. I let my fear get the better of me, and I hurt you in ways I can't even imagine. I ruined your life for a little while, and I'll carry that guilt forever." Her confession hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Marcus studied her face, searching for sincerity. He saw pain, regret, and exhaustion etched into her features. Slowly, he nodded. "I believe you're sorry," he said quietly. "But saying sorry doesn't fix everything. You have to make sure something like this never happens again. Not to me, not to anyone else." Sarah wiped her tears and nodded, vigorously. "I will," she promised. "I've been talking to counselors, learning about why I reacted the way I did, and I'm working hard to be a better mom to Emily. Please, Marcus, please forgive me." Forgiveness didn't come easily, but Marcus understood that holding on to anger wouldn't help either of them heal. "I forgive you," he said softly, "but forgiveness isn't the end. It's the beginning. We all have work to do." While Marcus worked on rebuilding his life, the town continued its own journey toward healing. Community leaders organized workshops and discussions aimed at addressing racial bias and fostering empathy. Schools introduced programs focused on critical thinking and media literacy, teaching students to question narratives before accepting them as truth. Churches held prayer vigils dedicated to unity, inviting speakers from diverse backgrounds to share their stories. Detective Laura Bennett became a prominent figure in these efforts. Her role in uncovering the truth earned her widespread respect, and she used her platform to advocate for systemic changes. At a packed town hall meeting, she addressed the crowd with conviction. "This case showed us our weaknesses," she said. "It exposed how quickly we jump to conclusions based on stereotypes instead of facts, but it also gave us a chance to grow. Let's honor Marcus Johnson's strength by committing to fairness and justice for everyone." Her words resonated deeply with the audience. Many residents pledged to examine their own biases and challenge prejudiced behavior when they encountered it. Some formed committees to address inequality in housing, education, and employment opportunities. Others volunteered with organizations promoting diversity and inclusion. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but the seeds of progress had been planted. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson faced the consequences of his actions. After pleading guilty to charges of child endangerment and obstruction of justice, he was sentenced to probation and ordered to attend mandatory counseling sessions. Though legally spared jail time due to his age and health conditions, socially, he paid a steep price. Friends distanced themselves, businesses refused to serve him, and protesters occasionally gathered outside his home. Isolated and humiliated, Mr. Thompson spent most of his days indoors watching television or tending to his garden, the only solace he had left. Yet karma, as unpredictable as ever, found its way back to him too. One afternoon, while pruning roses in his backyard, he heard a knock at the door. Opening it cautiously, he found Emily standing there clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Hi, Mr. Thompson," she said shyly. "I just wanted to thank you for helping me when I needed it. Even though things got messy, I know you didn't mean any harm." Mr. Thompson blinked in disbelief. Tears welled up in his eyes as he knelt down to meet her gaze. "Emily," he whispered hoarsely, "you should hate me. I made a big mistake." "You did," Emily admitted, "but everybody makes mistakes. Mom says we should try to understand each other better. So, I forgive you." Her kindness struck a chord in Mr. Thompson's heart. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe redemption was possible, even for someone like him. As winter melted into spring, signs of renewal appeared everywhere. Trees blossomed, flowers bloomed, and the once divided town embraced a fragile sense of unity. Marcus noticed subtle shifts in how people treated him. Conversations grew, warmer, smiles more genuine. Customers who had avoided his shop during the scandal now returned, bringing their families and friends along. One Saturday morning, Marcus arrived at work to find a surprise waiting for him. Dozens of townsfolk had gathered outside the garage, holding banners and balloons. "Welcome back, Marcus," read one sign. Another declared, "Justice prevails." As he stepped out of his car, applause erupted, echoing through the quiet street. "We wanted to show you how much we appreciate you," said Mrs. Anderson, the owner of the local bakery, handing him a box of freshly baked cookies. "You've always been part of this town, whether some of us realized it or not. We're sorry for failing you." Touched beyond words, Marcus fought back tears. "Thank you," he managed to say. "This means a lot." The celebration marked a turning point, not just for Marcus, but for the entire community. People laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed food donated by local businesses. Children played tag in the parking lot, their laughter mingling with the chatter of adults. For the first time in months, the town felt whole again. Still, Marcus knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. Healing required constant effort, and old wounds could reopen without warning. But he also believed in the power of resilience. By choosing compassion over bitterness, he inspired others to do the same. His story served as a reminder that even in darkness, light could shine through, if people dared to let it. And so, as spring turned into summer, the town continued to evolve. Walls crumbled, bridges were built, and hearts opened wider than ever before. Karma, in its mysterious way, had delivered both punishment and grace. Through it all, Marcus stood tall, embodying the strength and dignity that defined him, a true testament to the human spirit's capacity for growth and forgiveness. As the seasons changed and the town moved forward, Marcus Johnson's life began to take on a new rhythm. The scars of his ordeal remained, but they no longer defined him. Instead, he chose to focus on rebuilding, not just for himself, but for the community that had wronged him. In doing so, he became an unexpected symbol of hope and resilience. The auto repair shop flourished under his care. Word of his exoneration and quiet strength spread far beyond the town's borders, drawing customers from neighboring areas. People came not only to fix their cars but also to meet the man who had endured injustice with dignity. Some brought gifts, homemade pies, jars of jam, or hand-knitted scarves as tokens of gratitude. Others simply wanted to shake his hand and thank him for inspiring them to be better versions of themselves. One day, a young boy named Tommy visited the shop with his father. Tommy was shy, hiding behind his dad's legs as they approached the counter. "Mr. Johnson," the father said, clearing his throat nervously, "my son has something he wants to say." Marcus smiled warmly and crouched down to Tommy's level. "What is it, buddy?" Tommy hesitated before pulling a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. It was a crayon drawing of a tree surrounded by smiling stick figures. "I made this for you," he mumbled, looking at his shoes. It's about forgiveness." Marcus took the picture gently, his eyes softening. "Wow, this is amazing," he said sincerely. Thank you, Tommy. You know what? Forgiveness is like planting a seed. If you water it and take care of it, it grows into something beautiful. Just like this tree. Tommy grinned, his shyness melting away. That's what my teacher said too. Moments like these reminded Marcus why he kept going. Though the journey had been painful, it gave him opportunities to connect with others in meaningful ways. He realized that his experience wasn't just his own. It belonged to everyone who had witnessed it. And through those shared moments, healing continued to ripple outward. Meanwhile, Sarah Carter worked tirelessly to rebuild her relationship with Emily. The weeks following the scandal were challenging for both mother and daughter. Emily struggled to trust Sarah after learning about the false accusation against Marcus. She often retreated into silence, retreating to her room or spending hours drawing pictures alone. Social workers encouraged Sarah to remain patient, reminding her that repairing broken trust took time. Determined to make amends, Sarah enrolled in parenting classes and therapy sessions. She learned strategies for managing stress and communicating openly with her daughter. Slowly, she began to implement these lessons, creating space for honest conversations. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Emily finally spoke up. "Mom," she said softly, "why did you lie about Marcus?" Sarah sighed, bracing herself for the difficult conversation ahead. "I was scared, sweetheart. I didn't know where you were and I panicked. I thought if I blamed someone, people would help me find you faster. But I was wrong to point fingers at Marcus. I hurt him really badly and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." Emily nodded thoughtfully. "Do you think people will stop being afraid of each other now?" "I hope so," Sarah replied, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "But it's not enough to just hope. We have to work for it, to listen, to understand, and to stand up when something isn't right." Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Emily started opening up more, sharing stories from school and laughing freely again. Sarah, in turn, vowed never to let fear dictate her actions. Together, they attended counseling sessions, participated in community events, and volunteered at local shelters. They weren't perfect, but they were trying, and that mattered. In another corner of town, Mr. Thompson faced his own reckoning. His sentence included weekly counseling sessions with a therapist specializing in accountability and rehabilitation. At first, he resisted, dismissing the process as unnecessary. But over time, he began to confront the choices that led to his downfall. He realized how his secrecy and poor judgment had endangered Emily and damaged the community's trust. During one session, the therapist asked him a pointed question. "If you could go back to that night, what would you do differently, Mr. Wyme?" Thompson paused, reflecting deeply. "I'd tell someone," he admitted. "I wouldn't try to handle it myself. I see now how my actions caused chaos. I should have trusted the authorities instead of taking matters into my own hands." His candor impressed the therapist, who encouraged him to extend that honesty to others. With hesitation, Mr. Thompson decided to write letters of apology to Emily, to Marcus, and to the townspeople. Each letter was heartfelt, acknowledging his mistakes and expressing remorse. While some recipients accepted his apologies, others ignored them entirely. But regardless of the response, writing the letters helped Mr. Thompson reclaim a sense of integrity. Back in the heart of town, Detective Laura Bennett spearheaded initiatives aimed at fostering long-term change. Recognizing the need for systemic reform, she collaborated with local leaders to establish a task force focused on addressing racial bias and promoting inclusivity. The group organized training programs for law enforcement officers, educators, and business owners, emphasizing the importance of fairness and empathy. Laura also advocated for increased transparency within the police department. She pushed for policies requiring thorough investigations before making arrests, ensuring that evidence, not assumptions, drove decision-making. Her efforts earned praise from civil rights organizations, which highlighted her work as a model for other communities. One evening, as Laura walked home from the station, she passed the mural painted by teenagers months earlier. The vibrant colors still caught her eye, and she smiled at the words etched beneath the tree: kindness, justice, forgiveness, unity. Above the tree, someone had recently added a new phrase, lessons learned. She stood there for a moment, reflecting on the progress they'd made. It hadn't been easy, there were setbacks, disagreements, and moments of doubt, but the town had come a long way since the days of fear and division. Laura felt proud of what they'd accomplished together, knowing that real change required ongoing commitment. As summer approached, the town celebrated its resilience with a festival called Unity Day. Streets were closed off, and booths lined the sidewalks offering food, crafts, and activities for all ages. Local musicians performed on a makeshift stage, filling the air with lively melodies. Children ran around with balloons, while adults mingled, sharing stories and laughter. The center of the festivities stood Marcus, surrounded by friends and supporters. Someone handed him a microphone, inviting him to say a few words. He hesitated briefly, then stepped forward, scanning the crowd. "I didn't plan to become a symbol of anything," he began, his voice steady. "All I ever wanted was to live peacefully, work hard, and treat people with kindness. But life doesn't always give us what we expect. Sometimes it gives us challenges that test our strength and character." He paused, letting his words sink in. "This town taught me a lot about pain and prejudice, but it also showed me the power of forgiveness and growth. We've made mistakes, yes, but we've also taken steps to fix them. That's something worth celebrating." The crowd erupted in applause, cheering loudly. Marcus smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. For the first time in a long time, he truly believed in the possibility of a brighter future, for himself, for the town, and for everyone willing to embrace change. Karma, though harsh, had delivered its verdict. Truth had prevailed, justice had been served, and redemption had found its way into even the darkest corners. As the sun set over the horizon, casting golden light across the festival, the town stood united, a testament to the enduring human spirit's capacity for renewal and hope. The Unity Day Festival marked a turning point for the town, but it was only the beginning of a larger transformation. Over the following months, the lessons learned from Marcus Johnson's ordeal continued to shape the community in profound ways. What had started as a tragedy became a catalyst for growth, pushing people to confront uncomfortable truths and strive for meaningful change. Marcus himself remained at the heart of this evolution. Though he never sought recognition, his quiet strength and resilience inspired countless individuals. People often stopped by the auto repair shop not just for car maintenance, but to share their own struggles and seek advice. Some confided in him about personal hardships, losses, failures, or moments of injustice they'd endured. Others simply wanted to express gratitude for the way he handled adversity. One afternoon, an elderly woman named Mrs. Harper entered the shop, leaning heavily on her cane. She hesitated near the counter, looking unsure. "Mr. Johnson," she said softly, "do you remember me?" Marcus glanced up from his work and smiled. "Of course, Mrs. Harper. You used to bring your sedan in every few months," she nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. I need to apologize. When all that trouble happened, I believed the worst about you. I let fear cloud my judgment, and I'm so sorry for that." Marcus set down his tools and walked over to her. "Thank you for saying that," he replied kindly. "It takes courage to admit when we're wrong. Let's focus on moving forward together." Mrs. Harper left the shop feeling lighter, as though a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Stories like hers became common as more residents confronted their biases and reached out to make amends. The town began to feel less divided, its people bound by a shared commitment to understanding and compassion. Sarah Carter, too, underwent significant changes. Her journey toward redemption wasn't easy, but it was genuine. With Emily by her side, she immersed herself in volunteer work, helping organize food drives, clothing donations, and mentorship programs for struggling families. These efforts allowed her to reconnect with the community and rebuild trust, not just for herself but for Emily as well. Emily flourished under her mother's renewed dedication. She excelled in school, joined the art club, and made new friends, who admired her creativity and kindness. One day, during a class assignment about heroes, she wrote an essay titled, "My Real Hero, Marcus Johnson." In it, she described how Marcus's grace and forgiveness had taught her the importance of second chances. When Sarah read the essay, she hugged her daughter tightly. "You know," she said, "Marcus is a hero to a lot of us. He reminds us that even in the darkest times, there's always hope." Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson's path to redemption took unexpected turns. After completing his counseling sessions, he decided to use his resources to give back to the community. He donated funds to build a youth center designed to provide safe spaces for children and teenagers. The facility included classrooms, sports courts, and art studios, offering programs focused on education, recreation, and conflict resolution. At the grand opening ceremony, Mr. Thompson addressed the crowd, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I made mistakes that hurt others deeply," he admitted, "but I believe everyone deserves a chance to make things right. This center is my way of saying sorry, not just to Emily and Marcus, but to all of you." His words earned cautious applause, signaling a tentative acceptance. While some still harbored resentment, many recognized his sincere effort to contribute positively. Over time, the youth center became a cornerstone of the town, fostering connections among generations and promoting inclusivity. Detective Laura Bennett's influence extended far beyond the immediate aftermath of the case. Her advocacy for transparency and accountability within law enforcement sparked nationwide attention. Journalists interviewed her for articles highlighting innovative approaches to policing, while other departments invited her to lead workshops and training sessions. Laura embraced these opportunities, knowing that systemic change required collective action. Locally, she worked closely with schools to implement anti-bias curricula, teaching students to recognize stereotypes and challenge discrimination. She also collaborated with community leaders to establish a hotline where residents could report concerns without fear of retaliation. These initiatives created a culture of openness and mutual respect, empowering individuals to speak up against injustice. One evening, as Laura reflected on her achievements, she received a letter from Marcus. Inside was a simple note. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did. Your courage changed everything." Touched by his words, Laura realized that her role in the case had been more than professional. It had been deeply personal. By standing firm in the pursuit of truth, she had helped restore faith in justice itself. As autumn returned, painting the town in hues of orange and gold, the scars of the past seemed less visible. Yet reminders lingered, serving as gentle prompts to stay vigilant. The mural painted by teenagers now bore additional phrases added by different hands: empathy, courage, growth. It stood as a living testament to the town's progress, evolving alongside its people. On a crisp Saturday morning, Marcus attended a groundbreaking ceremony for a new park dedicated to unity and healing. Named Harmony Park, it featured playgrounds, walking trails, and a central plaza adorned with plaques honoring local heroes, including Marcus. As he stood beside Mayor Peterson, listening to speeches praising the town's resilience, Marcus felt a deep sense of peace. Afterward, a young girl approached him holding a bouquet of wildflowers. "Are you Marcus?" she asked shyly. "Yes, I am," he replied, kneeling to meet her gaze. "And who are you?" "I'm Lily," she said, handing him the flowers. "My mom told me about what happened to you. She said you showed everyone how to be brave and kind, so I wanted to thank you." Marcus accepted the bouquet with a smile, his heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Lily. That means a lot." In the end, the story of Marcus Johnson wasn't just about survival, it was about triumph. Through pain and perseverance, he proved that even the harshest storms could yield rainbows. His experience reminded everyone that justice isn't just about punishing wrongdoing. It's about creating a world where fairness and empathy prevail. Fersi, town emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. Its people carried the lessons of the past into the future, determined to honor Marcus's legacy by continuing to grow. Karma, in its unpredictable yet inevitable way, had delivered both reckoning and redemption. And though challenges lay ahead, the community faced them with hope, knowing they had already overcome so much together.